Thank you. Nice to be here. Yeah, sure. It's the Raw Food Institute of Australia, funnily enough. And yeah, it's primarily online, and we're just in the process of getting government accreditation. So we'll have an accredited raw and vegan chef course available soon. I'm Australian raised and typical English diet. My family were absolute animal lovers, but didn't seem to get the connection between eating them and having them as pets. Dad was a big meat eater. We had, meat most nights, meat, three veg, typical diet. I think it was, my mum was extremely bored with the whole food process, so it was absolute, basics. And at one point I even remember she went from mashed potato to that powdered, over here it's called Deb, powdered potato that you add boiled water to. And look, it was revolting, but most nights it was chopped peas and mashed potatoes, sort of English diet. Lots of dairy, eggs, all very much, the standard part of our daily routine. And I think when I, probably late teens, became an absolute devoted vegetarian because of animals. It wasn't a health thing, when you're in your teens, you're immortal. Had no health issues, was perfectly fine. So it was very much an animal issue. And that stayed strong with me. Right up until I got ill and started to explore veganism. So no, we lived on the edge of farming land, so we saw a lot of farm animals. But no, we were typical English community living in a small Australian community surrounded by ponds, and that's the way we did it. Yeah. 99% of the time, there were the occasions that I thought, okay, well, look, I'll try this. I'll have a bit of chicken, I'll have a bit of fish. Fish was something I probably ate more of than, and I mean, we're talking, a handful of times through my life. But yeah, primarily vegetarian, and as I got older, very strongly vegetarian. 52 now, so probably 42 I was vegetarian. Oh, probably I'd been vegan probably the last 8 years. Started off with migraines, stomach pains, a little bit of pins and needles, which they put down to a pinched nerve in my neck, but it was mainly acute stomach pain and headaches. And so I would go along to the doctor, they'd give me a pethidine needle, and then with my stomach pain, I would spend up to 10 days at a time in hospital while they ran different tests. Eventually they took my gallbladder out, that fat, fair and 40 sort of principle. Well, at the time I was, pretty athletic and, didn't really fit the criteria, but they decided it was a gallbladder problem. They took that out. Pains didn't stop, kept me in for several days after the surgery. So I lost a perfectly healthy organ. The classic gallbladder profile. So if you have gallstones, chances are you're fat, fair and 40. So, I fitted two of the criteria, but certainly wasn't fat. And then we sort of progressed with the doctors saying, look, we think this is possibly something in your head. They referred me to a pain clinic to try and manage that. And look, at the time, Paul, I had three young children. I was at the gym. I was teaching martial arts. We lived in a beautiful 3-story home. And I was quite devastated because here, I was spending a lot of time in hospital. No one could tell me what was going on. Finally went to a wonderful GP in our local area, and she said, I know this is silly, but it sounds like it could be early stages of MS. And I said, oh, come on, cut it out. She said, no, look, we'll send you along, we'll get you some scans. And, when we got the diagnosis, it was shocking. And I think I lost a couple of months of my life coming to terms with it. But it was almost a relief because I knew I wasn't crazy. And by that time, I was starting to get a lot more sort of pins and needles in my arms and my legs. I was starting to get a sense of numbness in my peripheries, and my eyesight was getting a bit blurred. So all of these things started to confirm it. So before I got the diagnosis, because it was my mid to late 30s, I started to get these symptoms. So, and I was 42 when I was diagnosed. Absolutely. That pretty much summarises my diet. A good muesli for breakfast with soy milk, but I had yogurt. I was using a whey-based protein powder. Sometimes omelettes, often eggs in our diet. I always had black tea with cow's milk in it. And yeah, thought I was doing the right thing. So it was a healthy diet for all intent and purpose. There was a lot of fresh veggies, a lot of greens that I grew myself, but it was heavily dairy and egg based. There's no surgery that can be done for MS. There are drug therapies. Now we're going back 10 years, so they weren't as advanced as they are now. I decided, because during the process of trying to work out what was wrong with me, I'd been in hospital, as I said, several extended periods. I'd been overdosed with different drugs, not intentionally, I have nothing against doctors and nurses, they're amazing people, but I was one of many, many people they were caring for. I at one point went into anaphylactic shock from an overdose of a particular drug, nothing life-threatening because they're there with the drug for that, but that was another drug in my system. So when they said to me, this is what's going on, these are the drugs available, I said, I'm actually going to see if I can find a natural treatment. I knew there was something out there. Right? There had to be. They thought I was a bit crazy, but left me to it. They even said I should have regular scans, but when I looked into that, the scans that I'd had were like having 40 x-rays in one day. So I thought, well, I'm dealing with a body that's not well here. That's the last thing I need to do. So I opted, and I thought, well, what's it going to tell me? It's either going to tell me it's progressing or it's not. So I opted. I did. I started to do. It became understandably quite an obsession with me. I looked into a lot of the drug therapy, looked at what it was going to do, how it worked. No, that wasn't going to work for me. So I started to look into natural therapies, different practitioners that had great results, and I came across a gentleman in America actually who spends a lot of time in Australia, and he was my first introduction to raw. And he promotes a lot of things like water fasting and completely resting your system. And so that's when I started to think, well, look, it's going to progress one way or the other. If this natural therapy doesn't work, I can go to drug treatments. But hey, let's give this one a go first, because it just made sense. My body was doing something to itself because it had something going on that was a bit skewy. So I thought, well, maybe if I gave it what it actually needed, it might be able to straighten it out. So, and I get asked occasionally to do a magazine interview or something, and occasionally they will say to me, so you've cured yourself, and look, I'd like to be able to say that, but I can actually get in trouble if I say that, because it is an incurable disease. So I might not be cured, but you sure as heck wouldn't know I had MS now. So let's put it that way. I started to go down the path of completely raw. I was 100% raw, no diets, no dairies or eggs, so completely vegan and raw. We would do, my husband, who is a wonderfully supportive man, doesn't have any illnesses himself, but came on the journey with me. So we do 10-day water fast. So it was just water and salt. So it's like a saline solution, completely resting my system. Lots and lots of juicing, lots of green smoothies. So huge amounts of green leafy vegetables, which apparently are very, very good for the nervous system. And so it was really just I took out a lot of nuts, so a lot of, not low fat, but it wasn't a high fat diet. Very, very particular about organic. It had to be 100% organic. And at the time, we made some radical changes to our life as well. We moved from, we were living in Brisbane suburbs in a beautiful 3-story house, which wasn't overly practical when at that time I was getting around with a walking stick. I can remember times when my beautiful teenage son had to carry me up the stairs, and it was just crazy. So we moved to the country. We bought a beautiful little Queenslander that we live in now, which is a little timber home, if you're not familiar with what that is. A little cottage on 40 acres with beautiful fresh air, rainwater, spring water, and that I think made a big difference as well. Lots of rest, meditation. Yeah, so they were the move. And the other thing I did was reduce stress. I took a lot of stress out of my life, because apparently that's one of the biggest triggers if you have MS. We probably the first 3 months, it was the move and all the rest of it, that can be a bit stressful. But over time, I hadn't even noticed, but one day my husband said to me, do you realise it's been quite a while since you've had a flare-up? And I went, oh my God, I hadn't even noticed. And it just bit by bit, the symptoms started to sort of back off. My vision stopped being affected. I stopped getting pins and needles. I completely stopped getting numbness. I mean, the doctors had said to me, okay, look, what you're looking at really is a wheelchair. So it's at the moment it's relapsing, remitting. That always turns, or 90% of the time turns to progressive. So you might want to gear up for a wheelchair. And so that's why we bought this little cottage, because we thought worst case it can be modified, and I've still got pretty views. But the symptoms just did a complete turnaround. I found. Why? I can walk perfectly fine. I'm not sitting in a wheelchair. I'm not telling a story. You've seen me walk around getting my dog home. Um, Look, I'm not as fit as I was in my 30s when I first started to get symptoms, but hey, who is? As I say, I live on 40 acres. I have 10 rescue pigs, several rescue cows, animals all over the place. We build fences. I have a beautiful vegetable garden that I manage on my own. So not really a classic MS sufferer. Well, what happened? I was doing really well, feeling fantastic. We've been up here a couple of years. And I think I had one of those crazy epiphanies. I thought, oh, I live in dairy beef country. I'm going to start a cafe. And so, crazy idea. We started a little vegan cafe that was predominantly raw in the middle of our little town here. And it went off. It just got so popular. We'd have queues. And honestly, I was shocked. I thought, a beautiful woman I worked with who was one of my chefs, I thought we'd be sitting around twiddling our thumbs, having a cuppa and chatting a lot of the day. We were absolutely run off our feet. It got so busy. I ended up getting a little bit stressed it was 7 days a week. It was very busy. So we had a lot of people asking us, do you run courses? Can you teach me how to do this? What can we do? And so I ended up selling the cafe, and we started running courses, and just, with one of my chefs, like hands-on courses. And then we had a lot of people asking us, look, I live interstate, I live overseas, have you got something, that I can do? So we developed an online program, and then we thought, well, let's do something that can get recognised, because in Australia, I don't know what it's like where you are, but in Australia, you actually can't be trained as a chef unless you're prepared to handle meat. So that to me is crazy, because vegan and raw food, they're two of the fastest growing styles of eating in the world at the moment. We decided then, we registered the Raw Food Institute of Australia. We run online programs through it. They're basically for beginners, people wanting to get started. They're a weekly program that people can subscribe to. And as I said at the beginning, we're in the process of getting government accreditation in Australia so that people can actually become a registered raw food chef in Australia. So that's how it came to be. Menopause with no problems, and that's unheard of in this day and age. I'm sure in traditional societies, in fact I've done a lot of research on it, in traditional societies that have a plant-based diet predominantly, menopause isn't an issue, but in Western society it is. No problem there. I have no problems with weight stability. Look, everything. I don't suffer from any of the aches and pains that some of my friends are starting to complain about. And I think the main thing for me is obviously the MS lack thereof. But the energy stability, I love it. I sleep beautifully. I wake up really well. Fighting fit. He's a bit older than me, but once again, we can work from dawn till dusk on the property with no problem at all. At his age, he's supposed to be having, the usual regular checkups. He should be on a string of tablets by now. That thing of, you go to the doctor, we'll put you on this preventative, and then we'll put you on that because of the side effects of that preventative, and before you know it, you're on 10 tablets a morning. He takes nothing. There's nothing wrong with him. He's fighting fit. Blood pressure's great. Cholesterol's fantastic. So across some of it's a multi-pronged debate, isn't it? For me, I could argue all day with a paleo expert. they can tell me the science behind why meat is good for you, and I can tell them the science behind why meat is bad for you. But I think at the end of the day, the thing that none of us can argue about is the environmental damage created by the amount of cattle that we have on the property, on the planet, and the treatment of animals in our supposed factory farming. I mean, that in itself is a horrible impersonal term, isn't it? I think when I became vegan and started to look into the ethics and the process behind it, oh my God, I was horrified. I had no idea. I'm a very compassionate person. I'm a very ethical person. My animals have always been treated beautifully. When I started to look into what I was doing to baby cows by drinking milk, and then of course the health benefits or lack thereof of drinking milk, but and the factory farming of chickens. You know, I thought I was buying well when I paid the extra $3 to buy the barn eggs or the free range. Well, there's no such thing. I don't know what it's like where you are, but for us it means that that animal gets to stand in an area with 1,000 other chooks. It's got to have so many square meters of area to get to sunlight, but it can't get there because there's so many other birds. It's horrific, and I think all you've got to do is watch a Gary Yourofsky video on the treatment of bobby calves. As I said, I live in dairy country, and it breaks my heart. I drive past dairies in and out of town, and I see the little bobby calves penned up, waiting to be loaded up onto the trucks, or even some of the more compassionate dairies in the area, the little small holding dairies. They keep their calves penned up while they milk the mothers, and then the babies get the leftovers. That can't be good for the animals, and the trauma, the emotional stress. Why would we do that? And you know, it's that expression, something to the effect of if slaughterhouses had glass walls, we'd all be vegetarian. It's so true. It is so true, isn't it? You know, and but even if you put that aside and you don't want to know about it, don't tell me, which is what a lot of people say, then let's look at the environmental impact. The amount of forests that are being cleared to feed the cattle, and being cleared to grow the soy to feed the cattle, which are held in feedlots the size of small cities. These animals are exposed to weather. The topsoil's being eroded both through the animals and the lack of forestation. It's just, where does it stop? You know, let's pick a point, and we shouldn't be eating meat. You know, I will argue forever on the health benefits of being a vegan. But if you want to challenge that one, then look at the environmental impact. If you don't want to hear about that, look at the compassion. Just look at, why would you want to see a baby cow taken away from its mother? It goes up to 3 days if it survives without food, because keep in mind its food is milk, and it's too expensive to feed it while they're shipping it to slaughter. These animals are frail. And then let's talk about the chooks, and then my real passion, the pigs. I live in a country or an area where we've got cattle, we've got sheep, we've even got alpacas up here for the wool, but you will never see a pig because they're destructive, they're headstrong, they need electric fences, they need a lot of proper containing. So they're kept in the most horrific environments. They never see daylight. They're incredibly intelligent animals. I've got one sleeping outside my door at the moment. She's beautiful. Her name's Tilly. She plays. She's sweet. She's gentle. She lays down for a belly rub. To me, you wouldn't eat a dog in our country anyway. Why would you eat a pig? Registered sanctuary or anything, but we started with one pet pig. I just had an urge to have a pet pig, as everybody does, I'm sure. And then people got wind of the fact that we had a pig, and, we've got a pig and it's not working for us, can you take it? So we took one, then we ended up with 4. Now we have council limits on how many, without going into detail, how many pig points you're allowed to have, and it doesn't equate to the amount of animals, but we've ended up, we've got 10 pet pigs, 10 friends that share our property with us. We have cattle, we have geese. I think probably 95% of our animals are rescues. They find their way to us one way or another. They know they've got a beautiful forever home here. They're safe. And it is a magnificent environment. We've bought an old dairy, so there's lots of grazing land. It's a beautiful spot. But if you see these animals, interacting with each other in their natural environment, doing what they're supposed to do, oh God, you'd never eat them again. You know, they're just oceans. I mean, you keep in mind a lot of these animals that are slaughtered are babies or very young animals. We have a pig on the property at the moment. She has babies, and she is unbelievably protective of those babies. The babies cry if they can't see mum. I stand sometimes, our pigs have a particular area that's fenced off because we unfortunately have a dingo problem around here. We back onto forest. And so we have electric fencing around the area where the pigs spend a lot of their time. And I'll stand sometimes on the veranda and watch them. They interact, they have friendship groups, they have peer groups, they look after each other. I mean, if we occasionally we end up with a pregnant sow, and the other girls come up and you watch them, and I'm not lying here, they use their snouts and they massage their backs and they rub up against each other. They have such compassion and caring. Why would you think it's okay to kill something that sweet and it was killed compassionately? My attitude is if that thing wants to live, be it an animal, a human, then, you know, and yeah, we get the argument, oh, but you eat a potato, you kill the whole plant. Okay, well, let's go down that path as well. Yeah, all right. But animals have nervous systems. They feel the pain, they feel the terror. That is, I'm not a nutritionist, so I'm speaking opinion here. You know, I want to make that very clear. But that is my research. And one of the reasons that they suggest nervous system disorders like MS are so common in Western societies. We do have a very, very high animal protein diet. Even people I've had conversations with who are absolute paleo advocates, their animal protein consumption is very low because they're trying to replicate what you know, sort of traditional societies do. Their meat consumption is generally for special events very low. It's not a 3 times a day luxury, which we tend to, we just assume that it's our right to eat meat or animal protein 3 times a day in our society. And there is so much research that says that is one of the main reasons why cancers are on the rise, things like MS are on the rise, yeah, name a disorder. And I mean, let's face it, obesity. If you led a vegan diet, you are struggling to be obese. You know, unless you're going to live on Oreos. I think they're vegan, aren't they? You know, unless you're going to eat 10 packets of Oreos a day, really you're struggling to have an obesity problem. So pick a disease that is common, heart disease. Gosh, you know, where does it end? And, you know, and then there's a whole argument thrown in around immunisation and, you know, not so much the current ones, but the earlier ones. You know, that's another whole debate again. But I think there is a lot to be said for animal protein, which our bodies, okay, my opinion, our bodies don't need, don't want. The quantities that we're eating and the diseases, you know, that are turning up en masse. We do store it. From my own reading and research, we store it for a very, very long time. Eat some dirty mushrooms. You know, it's the B12 is it's bacteria that's in the soil. With our sterile food these days, it's a problem. People do use, sometimes I know a lot of my vegan friends eat things like nutritional yeast, an inactive yeast. I don't know what, savoury yeast. I'm not sure if you have it there, what you call it. That's high in B12. Vegans do need it, and I don't. But I haven't been vegan that long that it's a problem. My recommendation to anyone, and this is a question that comes up regularly, my recommendation to anyone that has concerns is go get a test. See what your B12 is like, and if you need supplement. But you know, I recommend very few supplements. It's not my thing, so I don't see why anyone in the world would ever need to take vitamin D. Get outside. Even if it's a cloudy day, you're still getting vitamin D. Roll up your sleeves, grow some veggies, go for a walk. We don't need huge amounts of any of them. You know, we don't need bucket loads of this stuff. Yeah, I'm sure they still have sunny days even with the snow on the ground. Do they have? I don't know what the weather's like in Norway, but look, I think it comes down to common sense, doesn't it? Use your common sense. If you think you're lacking in something, get tested. One of the things that horrifies me is when people self-diagnose on supplementation, because there is so much science that says our bodies don't really recognise these supplements that we're putting in that well, and they can have we are one of the first generations to heavily supplement. So let's not take too many risks. If you think you're lacking, take a short dose, through winter. Take some vitamin D if you think you need it. Then come summer, get the heck outside. In my diet, I love a good raw sushi. You can buy raw seaweeds. Look, it's once again where you live. I guess it could be that argument. But if you think you need a supplement, do. But it's not from my understanding, it's lack of iodine isn't something we suffer from in Western society. And eat some seaweed, or if you need a supplement, take it. But common sense. Cheesecakes, which have a nut base, they have, the key lime pie is predominantly avocado. So you're eating a slice of key lime pie is a handful of nuts and probably a whole avocado. So I think we were always very upfront with people in the cafe. We'd say to them, look, if you're going to eat that's a meal. Just please keep that in mind. It's a very high fat meal. They are good fats, but once again, all of my attitude around food is everything in moderation. I do still make the occasional cake if I've got friends coming over for dinner or something, but the rest will go in the freezer, and we'll have very, very small amounts. We would serve things like kale salad. We were one of the first, we were the first cafe in our town to introduce kale to our community, and now our local supermarket stocks it. It's a very common thing for other cafes to have kale in their salads, but we would do things like kale salad. We do the zucchini pasta with a beautiful tomato sauce on it. These were all very, very novel to people in the early days. I mean, it's quite a big movement up our way now. We've got quite a few cafes. We were the first, and we kept things very, very simple because it was more the wow factor of, hey, that's just a piece of raw zucchini you're eating there. It's not actually pasta, and that's low fat. And we would do more vegetables, and we did beautiful smoothies to introduce people to very gentle green smoothies, nothing like I would have at home, but, very gentle green smoothies, cucumber and spinach and things like that, very gentle ones. It wasn't high fat at all. I can remember the first glass of wine I had. It was 12 months in. It was a beautiful organic vegan glass of white wine. It should have been red, I know, but it was white. And oh my God, it was like nectar. I just thought, oh, this is so good. I love sharing a glass of wine with friends. But for obvious reasons, I was very disciplined. These days, I will have a glass of wine if I've got friends over for dinner. I'm still very strict about organic. I'm very strict about vegan, low fat. But look, if I go out somewhere and friends have served me something that's not low fat, I always tell people I'm vegan. I won't compromise that. But I'm not as strict these days, but as soon as I feel anything, one of the classic symptoms of MS is a deep bone fatigue, a really horrible sense of fatigue. So if I find myself, and it's probably one of the few symptoms that I really feel these days, but if I find myself feeling a little bit more tired than just a healthy tired at the end of a busy day, then I get really, really strict again for a month. But look, my idea of a relaxed diet is probably as strict as you'll ever find. It's probably a much stricter diet than the average person would ever consider. But passionate by nature. I love my life. I have a wonderful world that I live in, and I didn't want it taken away. One of the things that scared me the most was it was starting to affect my optic nerve. Now I'm a very visual person, and the thought of not being able to see my children, my grandchildren, my animals, or read a book scared the heck out of me. On that note, one of the things that, and totally, not off track, but one of the things that really impresses me these days, my youngest is 23, and I watch her and her friends. They have such an amazing attitude to diet now. The attitude, there's a big vegan movement amongst the younger ones, but their attitude now is beauty is from diet. When I was young, it was beauty comes because you're skinny and you haven't eaten for a week. These days, it's a glow and so it seems to be becoming more of a norm. I don't know what it's like, I mean, it's around here anyway, in Brisbane, we've got beautiful beaches, it's a very sunny environment, and so the kids look great anyway, but the juice bars are popping up everywhere and vegan cafes are coming up. So the younger people are demanding it anyway. So, off track, but even I had an argument. Well, no, I don't argue. I had an interesting conversation with a vegan friend the other day. I'm definitely not one of those aggressive vegans. I like to just sort of say, hey, whatever works for you. But hey, did you know, blah, blah, blah. But I had an interesting conversation with a vegan friend the other day who just cannot give up leather. She loves leather shoes and handbags and coats. And I just quietly said to her, I'm surprised that you still wear leather. And she said, well, I kind of figure, the animals are dead anyway, which is the argument people often put forward for meat. And I just mentioned to her that even if the whole planet stopped eating meat, there is a huge independent leather industry now that would justify the killing of animals still. It's actually no longer a byproduct of the meat industry. And she had no idea. I just pointed to a few websites. And, that's another interesting thing. People don't think of the clothing that they're wearing. I mean, look, let's be honest, and any non-vegan will tell you this, it is impossible to be 100% vegan because even tyres have animal products in them. And I live in the country, I have to drive. But I think if everybody were to do as much as you and I are doing, my goodness, the place would be a better place, wouldn't it? We would have enough food to feed everybody. And I know that sounds cliche, but it's actually true. Start feeding the grain to people, not cows. The worst things that's happened to the vegan movement is the passion behind it. People can get quite aggressive when they start talking about the treatment of animals. And I think most people go vegan for that reason. And I think it does have, that age-old quote, how do you know if someone's a vegan? Well, don't worry, wait around 10 minutes and they'll tell you. And it's so true. Vegans do tend to be quite obnoxious, and I think that can be, that just gets people's backs up. The last thing you want to do is tell someone what not to do and do it aggressively, But I just, people say to me, oh, you don't eat meat. No, I don't, so why don't you eat animal products? And I'll explain to them. And I've got dear friends down the road here, old-fashioned farmers. They came to my husband's 60th birthday, last year, and they were, they were quite stunned. They were staying outside at the table outside, and I said, look, food served, come on in. They said, oh, we're a bit scared. I said, no, come in and try it. And, Paul, they were lining up for seconds. But if I'd gone out there and rammed it down their throats about why they shouldn't be eating meat, they wouldn't have even turned up to the party. But now they've come, and that was our philosophy with the cafe. We had beautiful quotes around the walls. We made it an absolute rule amongst the staff. You do not browbeat people. If they ask about animal rights, tell them, but tell them respectfully. If they want to know more, refer them to me, because the whole thing was, let's just show people. And isn't it about compassion? And doesn't that go as far as humans? Why should we be compassionate to animals and aggressive to humans? It really doesn't make sense to me. I ram it down their throat. I remember we have one vegan activist up our way, and look, I'm sure she's a lovely lady. I've never had the chance to sit down and talk to her, but I actually had to ask her to leave the cafe one day. She was dining with a group of friends, and she stood up and started lecturing the whole cafe. Now, we have... we used to have a lot of people, they'd come in, and we used to serve a couple of cooked dishes. We called ourselves a transitional environment, so people could come in and have a nice hot soup or something. And so we'd get a lot of the old farmers in for their lunchtime soup in winter. And she stood up and started lecturing, these dairy beef farmers. And I had to ask her to leave because she wasn't doing it. First of all, it was not her business to do it anyway, but she wasn't doing it diplomatically. People don't want to be lectured at, and they don't want to be treated badly. Most people aren't eating meat because they're cruel. They're eating meat because they are not educated yet. And sort of sipping on it. Water's an interesting one, isn't it? Because once again, it depends where you live. I think it's critical. In Australia, they've recently introduced compulsory fluoride in our water. So they're medicating us, whether we want it or not. That's if you're on town water. We're fortunate here, as I said, we've got beautiful rainwater tanks, and we've got the most stunning spring on our property. But if you are subjected to town water, you've got the chlorine, you've got all the nasty heavy metals, you've got God knows what else in there. But now you've got fluoride, and there is some nasty science around it, because the fluoride that we're using is actually waste product from Chinese industry. So it's not even medical grade. It's revolting stuff. So look, I think water's critical. And then how do you source it? I would say to people, get a filter, don't buy the plastic. You know, I do have, you may have gathered, I have a bit of a stand on the environment, so I don't believe in plastic bottles for water. But I think for the average person, get a decent filter and drink a couple of litres a day. Get off, you know, I mean, I have a coffee occasionally, but get off the coffee, get off the soft drinks. You know, if you have to use Coke, use it as a pesticide in the garden, but don't drink the stuff, God. Beautiful sleep a day. Actually, I got 9 last night. It was wonderful. Now, keep in mind, I sleep with my husband and 4 dogs. So, you know, it's quite a sardine fest in our bed. But no, I think sleep is critical. It makes you happy. One of my most favourite moments at the end of the day, I lay down, I stretch out, and I just go, oh, God, I love this. It's a beautiful thing. And if you've treated your body properly, I don't believe in having heavy meals at night. We have our lunch at around 2 or 3 o'clock, and then we just, if my husband wants a snack, he'll have something, or we'll have a smoothie or a juice or something, or a broth. I think help your body to go through its natural cycles each day, and then by the time you lay down, all those beautiful sleep hormones have kicked in, and oh my God, it's the best part of the day. I'm probably religiously 80 to 90% raw. I do enjoy a soup. I do enjoy cooked beans. So I'll sometimes cook up some beans and have a nice stew or something. You know, we're in the middle of winter at the moment, so a nice soup or something is just lovely. But that won't come with a cooked bread. I might serve it with a raw bread that I've made, or crackers, or nothing at all. So just, you know. Yeah, not a huge amount, but yeah. I don't think they even need to start with something as upmarket as a Vitamix. Look, just a good blender is an absolute must, because, as you know, a big part of a raw diet are the smoothies. And I put chia seed, flaxseed, hemp protein, things like that in it. And you do need a good blender to get a nice, creamy, beautiful, smooth, whether you're making sauces or your cakes, soups, smoothies, they can all be done in a blender. One thing that I love to recommend to people is the food spiralizer, because that's fun. It's a $40 gadget. It's not essential at all. You can use a potato peeler and get a similar effect, but it's fun. A sharp knife, a good chopping board, and as you get more advanced, you can start. Oh no, I don't even think you have to have a food processor. A blender, a knife, a chopping board, and then if you want something fun, get some form of spiralizer. Yeah, great way to get kids to eat zucchini. They eat it as they've spiralized it, things like that. But you don't need anything. It's about creativity. All my salad dressings are made in a jar. I just add the ingredients and shake it up. I have a good knife. And I mean, I'm a gadget queen. You look in my cupboard, I've got every gadget known to man, but I have to be honest, the ones that I bring out are the ones I've listed. So making your own dressings, I think people forget that the dressing is part of the nutrition, and you can add a heck of a lot of nutrition in a dressing. Instead of using the shop bought ones, make your dressings. They're super quick and easy. And, you know, for more advanced people, just keep going and spread the word. But look, I mean, I love our website. I think we've got some beautiful contributors, and we do offer a lot of stuff on there. I have a recipe book on there, Kind Living Kitchen. But I also think go see Don Tolman's work. He is amazing. Do you know Don? He is a wonderful, crazy cowboy. He's the American man that introduced me to raw food. He is fantastic. You know, check his work out and support your local cafes. If you've got a cafe that serves that sort of food, check it out. If they haven't, ask them for something, and you might open their eyes to something new. But that's about all. Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. Thank you. You too.